We've arrived early in Phnom Penh, so we've gone down to the boardwalk here to have a look around. Unfortunately, there's rubbish in the water, which I didn't half expect anyway. Although there are rubbish bans all around the place, so I don't know. Education needs to be done, don't know. Then we're going to proceed up the boardwalk to find out where the night market was and have a look at what that is in town here close. Fairly interesting, and more interesting was across the road was actually one tree absolutely full of bats. We did do the night market for dinner, but unfortunately food was a bit of a letdown. So we're using a tuk-tuk today. It's just too difficult for a motorbike for me, and it's too hot. Our tuk-tuk driver there, hopefully he will survive. So we've arrived at the Golden Temple. First impressions, it's very pretty. The area also had a few other temples around it, but they were locked, and so we couldn't actually go in and have a look at them. Just had a look at them from the outside. I presume they were in use, I'm not sure. There was a lot going on here. These steps were really interesting. Naga there with the snake type thing going up it. Then up the top here there were lots of little buildings. Not too sure what they represented, but again they were pretty, and there were lots of things to look at. Inside, well, there were murals from ceiling to floor, and I presume they all represent stages of Buddha's life. I'm not exactly up on that sort of stuff. It was well done. It was really beautiful. And then there were all the Buddhas up at the end that were visible. I don't know what the flashing light thing's all about. There seems to be a trait nowadays in some of these temples. I think it's a bit gaudy myself, and I'm not too sure why it's taken off. But as you can see, this area is surrounded with a bit of bush, and yeah, it was quite nice. Interesting tour. And there was a donation box where we did do a small donation. This is some of the first times we've had to work out how much we're paying for things, because everything in Cambodia was US dollars, and then you would also receive some of the local currency back in real, so it was quite confusing trying to convert New Zealand to US and then real to New Zealand to try and work out what you were paying for things. It was quite tricky, and actually became we began to realise that things weren't as cheap in Asia anymore as they used to be. So we had to try and work things out a bit better when we were spending. We could see that costs were going to go up a bit. As you can see here, there's a lot of statuettes, and I don't know if they all represent something to do with stages of Buddha, but they were very well done. It was an interesting temple. Well worth a quick visit. Probably one of the nicer temples that we've been to. And then after this, the next destination was the monkey temple. I'm not a great fan of monkeys, but they didn't seem to really bother us. They got a bit close. Now this was actually more like a cemetery than a major temple, and all these stupas, of course, they contain the bodies of somebody, and there were quite a few of them. We did get latched on to by what appeared to be some people in poverty that lived on the grounds, who of course didn't speak English but proceeded to try and be tour guides while we were there. Well, I knew what was coming. It was going to end up where we'd be donating some money to them. But anyway, that's the way it is in Asia. You just go with the flow and do what happens. That tree was quite interesting. Apparently it's poisonous, but they use the flowers for things. It had quite a large park, and there was all sorts of different things going on. Again, I don't know what these statuettes represent. All I know is all these stupas here are like graves, so everyone was different. Some of them were very ornate, some were slightly plain, but they were quite pretty, very worth looking around. Then of course, when we walked up towards the temple itself, now this temple appeared to be a little run down. Of course I don't know why, but anyway, the people that latched on to us proceeded to take us inside of this place so we could have a look around. They seemed to have some sort of religious attachment to it, so we just proceeded to do whatever happened and see what the outcome was. As you can see, as we're approaching the steps here going up to the temple, again we have Naga with a snake-like body on either side of the steps. We later found out that the Naga represented the protector in the Buddhist mythology. That was later on when we did a visit to the Royal Palace. As you see, it looks a little bit run down as we're approaching it. There's a bit of stain and stuff on the walls, and the steps are a bit worn. So I'm not too sure who's looking after this place, but once you enter, it was actually quite nice inside. And their shrine at the forefront of the building was still in use and was quite pretty and tidy. Again, we had Buddha with a Naga behind him representing protecting him. After this, we then went to the Genocide Museum. Photos weren't allowed in here, so we've only taken a little short clips. This was quite eye-opening, and I think it's a major thing that you should do if you ever come to Cambodia. All around the area are graves of people, and yeah, quite a demoralising sort of thing. But you need to do it, understand Cambodia a bit more. It was a horrible thing they went through. The next day we visited the Cambodian Museum, which photos were not allowed, unfortunately. After that, the Royal Palace. Here we got a guide who took us around the place. I was hesitant about the guide, but it was well worth having them along because there were so many different buildings in this area, and it was such a large ground that without him I don't think I would have truly understood what any of the buildings were about, as well as he explained what some of the statuettes like Naga and that represented, and then he took us into what was a small museum area where they had the Cambodian types of clothing that they wore for daytime things, and there were royal jewellery and crowns, etc. in there, which was quite interesting, and I don't think without him there we would have really understood it. It's hot in there, It's a big area, but it's well worth going to see. I would recommend paying the extra, I think it was $10 US to have the guide, just to get a full understanding of what was going on. Now we head to Siem Reap.